Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be hosting one of our last CQF Institute Careers events of the year. It's called Navigating the Quant Future, Upcoming Trends and Essential Skills. Today, our panel of experts will be exploring how knowledge and skills are changing and evolving in the ever fast-paced world of quantitative finance and how you can stay ahead of the curve. My name is Sonia Aurora, and I'm the Partnerships Manager at the CQF Institute, and today I will be moderating the event. The CQF Institute is the awarding body of the CQF certification, and you can find out more about the qualification at our website, which is cqf.com. Our next CQF info session will actually be in the new year. I believe it's on January the 7th, where you can learn more about the program itself. And interestingly, today, all our panelists are CQF alumni. So let me start by giving a brief introduction to today's esteemed panel, and then we can get started with the discussion in just a few moments. First, we have Dr. Randeep Garg, who many of you know. He is the Managing Director of the CQF and the CQF Institute. Prior to joining Fitch Learning, Randeep spent 5 years working in the equities division at Solomon Smith & Barney, and he later traded futures and options on the Indian National Stock Exchange. So welcome, Randeep. We then have Mohammed Shayan, who is the Director of EMEA Quant Product Sales at the Bloomberg offices here in London. Mohammed works as an enterprise quant solutions specialist, and for the last 15 years, he's worked with buy-side and sell-side customers across the EMEA region, consulting on systems and technology optimization. Welcome, Mohammed. Ekaterina, or Katya, as we'll be calling her today, Palaeva, is an executive director in the Valuation Control in finance based here also in London. And within this group, Katya has global responsibilities for FID, model control, and macro products valuation control. So welcome, Katya, today. And our last panelist is Payal Bayani, who is the Vice President in Model Risk Management Group for CIB Trading Models at JP Morgan Chase. She has a total work experience of 14 years and has worked across various risk stripes, ranging from market risk, counterparty credit risk, liquidity risk, and model risk. Currently, Payal is with JP Morgan, and she leads the model risk team for equity derivatives in India. A special thank you to you, Payal. I know it's very late in your part of the world, so a special thank you for joining us today. Today's talk will take approximately an hour, and that will also include the question and answer session. If you have any questions for our speakers today, please make certain to put it in the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom of your screens. Also, if you could let me know who your question is directed to, that would be wonderful. And note that if you are viewing from the lobby, you will need to press the join button in order to officially enter the talk and be able to use that Q&A chat function. So welcome, everyone. And without further ado, I'm going to get started with the first question because I have lots of questions for all the panelists today. So the first question would be, with the evolution of artificial intelligence and machine learning, what skills are expected of quant finance professionals to succeed in the next 5 years? I'm going to direct this to Mohammed to start the discussion. So Mohammed, I'm going to hand over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Sonia. And hi, everyone. It's a great question and a very topical one. So I'm glad that we're starting with that. Look, most financial organizations emphasize on building a workforce that excels in creating impactful client outcomes. And these outcomes are driven by people who get the basics right. So number one advice I'll give to people is to get the basics right in terms of learning programming, learning path, and be very, very good at it. Learning maths and learning financial concepts. If the ingredients in your kitchen are good, then your food's going to be great, right? Number two, make AI your friend, right? So use copilots, LLMs for query languages, summarization tools, etc. are here to stay. So learn to use them, embrace them, and you are going to be the expert who's going to be a supervisor for these tools. And the third advice I'll give is, work on solving problems, right? So the more practical problems you solve, the better you're going to be. So, these three things I would say will make you in a better shape to be, using the AI tools to be successful.
Would any of the other panelists like to add to what Mohammed has just mentioned about the mathematics, the machine learning, his three top points?
Yeah, I completely echo with Mohammed's point that the fundamentals need to be very, very clear. The concepts need to be very, very clear, because the AI ML models is such that they are like complete black box, and to be able to explain them is a challenge. But if the math behind these techniques are clear to people, then they understand what the model is doing, and they are able to interpret the output as well and use it accordingly, right? So having the basics right and the fundamental right is the top most important things when you're using AI/ML in any.
I actually have an extension to that question. Maybe Randeep, you could step in here. What advice can you share with the audience to help them adapt to all these new skill sets that Mohammed and Payal have spoken about? What can they do to adapt to this new skill set that is required of them?
So, look, first of all, thank you for organizing this, Sonia. It's great to have our CQF alumni on here to talk about skills. And I do feel, Sonia, and I think you've lined me up, because it's easy. That answer is easy. Do the CQF if you haven't done it already. Right? And if you've done it, go to lifelong learning and watch the latest, you get access to the latest syllabus. So I don't want to just focusing on that. Let me also answer the wider question as well that you posed. And I think, I agree with both Mohammed and Payal. And I'll add to it, because you asked about the next 5 years, and I think you just don't know what's going to happen over the next 5 years. Lots of things are always changing. The latest kind of hot topics are AI and ML. And even we were having the discussion backstage, actually just a few moments ago, of the adoption of these techniques in the industry. Which organizations embrace them, which don't. And we were talking about banks who are naturally more conservative, okay, who aren't using them right now, but I believe will in the future. But also, if you go to hedge funds, or, I've been recently talking to quite a few sovereign wealth funds, and some of the world's largest, and they are adopting these techniques wholeheartedly, because they don't really worry about the regulators in the same way, shall we say, right? Or they've got slightly different regulatory frameworks. But going back to your question, Sonia, I think particularly on AI and ML is becoming, it is very important, and it's becoming more important. Where and how it's being used will continue to change. And I think people just have to keep themselves upskilled by seeing what's happening in the industry. But I would definitely echo the idea of getting the basics right. That's the starting point for anything, as Mohammed said, and I like the metaphor. If you haven't got the right ingredients in the kitchen, then whatever you make at the end of the day is not going to taste very good. So start with the fundamentals, but then build from there.
So I think, Randeep, you're saying that, because that's actually one of my other questions. So to bridge that gap by doing things like the CQF and upskilling, I think, Katya, let me then direct this to you. So you being in a leadership role, what advice would you give, obviously doing the CQF to bridge those gaps, but do you have any good examples or any way you feel that the audience can, with the new skills, that how do they bridge this gap? How do you do that?
So I would really add, in addition to the get basics right, which is like fundamentals to anything, I think it's so essential to grow the natural curiosity in whatever you are doing and what you are learning. Because as Randeep just said, there is still like lots of things to be explored, to be innovated, and to be created. And when you have the ingredients as the basic fundamentals, understanding and knowledge, and you put on top your exploratory type of skill set and try to explore what else can we make it, and be creative as well. So in a sense, it's some kind of, when you naturally care about what you are learning, what you are going into, you're exploring. This really naturally builds up your skill set and builds up your, commitment to the profession generally. So for me, being like in the industry for quite a number of years and seeing lots of junior team members coming in and out, it's really so like key differential when you see the person who is keen to explore, to learn, asking questions, reading additional materials, reading additional, courses, doing additional courses. So I'm so pleased to see, for example, when someone in LinkedIn are posting that they've done additional course, that they've done additional certification. So it really shows that there is the, heat and some kind of additional value of what you're doing and what you can do more. So yes, it takes efforts. It takes time to some fun things probably that you can do. But if you're passionate about your profession, then you really can find a good, bright things in learning new things.
Thank you, Katya. Some really wonderful points there and some valid points. And of course, LinkedIn, I know we have a lot of younger members of the audience here. So I say this all the time, make sure you put your skills, your LinkedIn is your public profile. And Katya, you've just said that you do look at LinkedIn and you do see who are those people that are upskilling. So you heard it here first. Let's move on and turn our attention to the next discussion point. The question is, in today's rapidly evolving landscape of computing and data, do you agree that quant finance professionals are expected to go beyond the technical solutions and mathematical insights? I know, Mohammed, you just mentioned those. Say, for example, possessing the qualities of flexibility, problem-solving abilities. I believe, Payal, you mentioned that, and the capacity to tackle unique and innovative challenges. So how valuable are all these other qualities in addition to the technical qualities? And Katya, I actually had you to answer this. So would you like to take the floor?
Right. I believe all innovations or all new discoveries are happening on the edges, where you're really crossing the border between different sciences or different approaches. So knowing math, knowing programming, knowing computer science would not be enough when you work in the organization, when you work in big organizations, when you work with different people. So it's really this skill set of being agile, adaptive to changes, adaptive to different personalities even. In big organization, it's invaluable. It's really something that you always need to take care of. It would be slightly difficult to assess it during the interview, so it's not possible to show it during the interview, but it's something that definitely is assessed and valued through the career progression. So being able to see things outside the box, being able to communicate, being able to investigate, being able to deliver on the edges, it's something that I think all employers are looking for in the candidates.
And do you feel, Katya, and anybody else on the panel, please feel free to add to this. How do you then select candidates from a more diverse range and background, given what you've just mentioned, that it's not just the technical skills?
So this is hard. I need to say, it's not always possible to very clearly assess, different skill set in one go during the interview. But I can even tell that in our team we have really diverse selection of the backgrounds, education, universities, and even the different countries, nationalities, and so on. So what we are trying to really look at as the different perspectives of the professional work. And this is exactly what we can have to enhance our current workforce so that we can be ready in upcoming challenges. So in a sense, be yourself when you go to the interview or be yourself when you apply for the job, but think what value you can bring to the table outside of your academical skill set. And outline this and explore with your manager, with the person who is conducting interview, anywhere else, explore what else can be provided.
I know, Mohammed, you and I have discussed the diverse group in your team at Bloomberg. Would you care to add to that?
Yeah, so I think we have a structure in place, and we kind of like split this into 3 or 4 broad different categories. So obviously we are looking for candidates who are technically sound, right? So that's like the first kind of thing you look at. So there's an element of practical assessment, and you're looking for people who are solving problems. For example, if you're hiring someone who should be helping with our portfolio optimization team, then we will test them on some tasks that that will be a practical example. But then on top of that, the second layer we have is around behavioral interviews. So we ask questions around if they've solved problems outside their area of expertise. We ask them a lot of follow-up questions on that. That kind of helps us in finding candidates who can go beyond their expertise. And then something that Katya mentioned is around having diverse hiring panels. So people who interview candidates internally, we have members from various different disciplines interviewing candidates so that we can get different perspectives and assess different perspectives from the candidates. That's really, really important, and we do that quite a lot. And then we also put focus on candidates' learning agility. So again, something that was mentioned before, if someone's like kind of self-taught, if they've done like kind of like a lot of online certifications, if someone's had a unique career path, right? So those kind of things we look at in quite a lot of detail. And if you have a structure in place and you break this down into practical assessment, behavioral, diverse hiring panels, emphasis on learning, then you tend to get a diverse workforce in your organization, and that's the kind of structure we use to get those candidates in our company.
I should be interested in your take on this. You being in the India region, you're based in Mumbai. How is diversity? How do you have and express diversity on your team with your colleagues? Could you touch upon that a little bit?
Yes, and similar to what Mohammed and Ekaterina have mentioned, similar kind of hiring patterns is what we also follow, wherein we're not just looking at people who are good in math and quant finance, but definitely people who are able to explore things beyond these areas, particularly on the AIML side. Not necessarily, they don't need to be really expert in every area of AIML, but the idea should be that if they have done certain projects, if they have taken part in some course or something of that sort, then they should have full knowledge or in-depth knowledge of that particular thing. So that's what we are trying to do here when we are, building our workforce. It's in India, we generally have junior folks coming up from universities and tapped universities, not just teaching finance, but also technology. And thankfully in India, we have lots and lots of institutes who are actually doing courses on AIML. So yes, we do tap those kind of students as well to build a strong workforce to be able to, meet upcoming challenges in terms of AIML modeling that we would see in our area.
Thank you so much, Payal. Some very interesting insights there. I want to just move on to the next topic, which focuses around communication. And the question is, the need for excellent communication will continue to be an important skill set required of quants across the board. Would you agree, however, that one area where quants find this quite challenging is to effectively communicate complex financial information, data, etc., technical data to a non-quantitative audience? And the reason this has come up is actually I've seen it in the 2024 CQF Institute Careers Board. This was one of the discussion points that the recruiters had made. It was a particular point. And I've heard this come up quite a few times. So Payal, I'm going to have you take up this question, if that's...
Yeah. So honestly, I don't think it's a challenge in general. Like I said in the beginning, if you have your basics very clear, if you have your concepts clear, then delivering the right message, delivering what any quantitative technique is doing is not going to be a big challenge. I think the challenge comes from the fact is because you're probably not, you have probably not looked through the model or looked through the technique in detail, and that is why you're struggling to communicate what exactly the model is doing. So I don't think we should think that this is a general problem, but yes, it is a problem. I wouldn't deny that. But I think my advice to people would be to, just have your basics right, just have the fundamentals right and concepts right, understand the concept behind each technique. And then it's not going to be that big a challenge to deliver the right message. Yes.
I think the theme here that I see is get your fundamentals, get your basics, get your foundation sorted. And then these won't be challenges, correct, Payal?
Exactly, because these areas, especially when we talk about AI/ML, they are, they are mostly black box. It's difficult to interpret them, as we would be doing in terms of, probably when we were doing regression models or some basic mathematical models. When we use AI/ML techniques or advanced ML techniques, it's not that easy. But yes, if you understand the concept behind each of these techniques, then you understand what is being done in every step of the model, and then you're able to understand the output as well, and then communicate it even to the non-technical audience.
Thank you, Payal. Sorry, Randy. Yeah.
I'll add to that. I'd say also take every model with a big pinch of salt as well, because I think what we have to remember is that I love the subject and quant finance, but I think we always have to remember that it is that discipline that is trying to answer questions in finance. It's not physics. It's not, so I think that's the other thing in communicating. Take it with a pinch of salt. Whatever comes out, it has assumptions behind them, and those assumptions sometimes aren't correct. I think that's the other thing. Communicate that. Make sure you communicate that to certainly senior executives who are looking for precise answers.
Yes, I just want to add to this point, and I agree with most of the stuff that's being said. I have the privilege of meeting a lot of quants across the globe. The nature of the job is as such that you end up speaking to quite a few different players in quite a lot of different institutions. I think today's quant is like a cross-functional player, right? So quants must work with data providers, they must work with technologists, they must work with business leaders, they must work with clients. And in the real world, quants who are better at storytelling and narrating the story on top of going through lines of code stand out. And so, if you are able to explain complex topics in simpler terms, that definitely helps. I always remember this, training I had at Bloomberg when I was starting to join this quant department. Someone who was explaining correlation versus causation, right? And they gave an example which kind of stuck with me forever, which was, just because people buy more ice cream and more sunglasses in summer doesn't mean that ice cream causes better vision, right? And that kind of stuck with me forever. And, I understood that concept. So, I would say, definitely if you don't have your fundamentals right, you won't be able to communicate. But then the art of storytelling is what differentiates, I think, in today's day and age. That's my kind of opinion on this particular question.
Katya, do you find it difficult? Do you have this concern in your organization, or how do you help some of your colleagues? There might be the junior colleagues who struggle. I would imagine it's the junior colleagues that may struggle with the communication and the entering, the workforce for the first time?
So, two strong advices that I'm giving myself, learned myself, and giving my colleagues, junior colleagues, is really first one, read your audience and read your partner whom you are talking to. What is the purpose of the conversation? What is the original nature of his or her question? So, in a sense, there is a reason why that person is coming to you. There is a reason why the person wants to understand this model and asking all these questions. So, because if you try to explain the model, you can explain it from different angles. There are different parts of the model, inputs, computation engine, realization, implementation, all of this. But probably the person whom you're talking to needs to know only portion of that, on only specific things about that. So firstly, figure out or ask directly or indirectly figure out what is the purpose of this conversation, of these questions. It will guide you where you need to focus on, where your message needs to be emphasized. And the second piece is really communicate. So in a sense, if you haven't clarity on what are you doing right now, or what are you asked for, and you have some doubts about this purpose, ask questions, communicate, pick up the phone, speak with this particular person or something. So there are lots of things and processes in the organization that can be done better if people are talking to each other. So in that sense, mind the purpose and communicate. Be initiative yourself. So for me, this is a key element of the strong, effective communication.
That's some sound actually advice. I think all the panelists have given some really sound advice, but just general workplace communication, whether you're in quant finance or whether in your first finance job, you're trying to get into quantitative finance. These are excellent points that all of you have made, and I've taken some notes myself. Let's transition to the next topic of the CQF qualification. I can see Randeep smiling with this, and not surprisingly, I am going to be directing this question to yourself. How is the CQF qualification evolving with the changes in the skill set demanded of quant finance professionals today and the future? And I think we were discussing this a little bit prior to the start of this session, because so many of our alumni, some have, like Mohammed, have just done the CQF, and Payal had done it quite a few years back. So I'm going to let you speak about this, Randeep.
So look, let me actually link back to some of the previous discussion points actually, and I'll start with diversity. So we've definitely seen a more diverse group of people coming to the CQF. The CQF Centre in its 22nd year now, started in 2003, and if you look at the demographics of people back then to now, it's changed quite a lot, and I think part of that is the need for this skill set. The quant skill set is becoming wider, and so I start with, because we were talking about, and it links into that diversity links into many of the things that we're discussing, including communication, I think. So that's why on the CQF actually, I think Katya, you did the CQF back in 2010, you said. Yeah, 2010. And so in those days, we actually only had, for example, one primer on mathematics. Now we actually have 3 primers: mathematics, programming, and finance, because we recognize that actually we needed people coming from such diverse backgrounds. They need to fill in their gaps. So that's what we did there. Now, going back to your question, Sonia, how is the CQF helping with the changes in the evolving skills? I guess what we always try and do, and what we continuously try and do, is make sure we're teaching relevant skills that are relevant now, that are going to be relevant in the future. Not all of them, as we were talking backstage, are used in every type of organization. So some organizations are more conservative. So we talked about banks and their adoption of all ML techniques, AI and ML, probably a bit more conservative than, say, a hedge fund. Well, certainly will be. So keeping the syllabus up to date, and that changes all the time. So at the moment, there's quite a significant amount on AI and ML, but we still teach all the traditional quant finance because that's really important to understand that and be able to implement and use traditional tools. And then keeping our alumni up to date. That's the other one as well. We talked about earlier about that hunger for knowledge, the hunger for new knowledge. And that's how we push the boundaries forward, trying things, being hungry for knowledge, hungry for skills. And so this is why I think we invest quite a lot of time in lifelong learning at the CQF and the CQF Institute. That's something that I spend a lot of time focused on trying to organize, kind of talks, lectures, conferences, all these kind of things, so that we can continue to explore what's going to happen in the future. So I don't know if that answered your question, Sonia, but kind of that's where we're trying to help with the CQF.
No, and I think we have. I mean, today we're seeing so much. We discuss it all the time. We have such a younger audience for the CQF. We have more students interested in it. And I think we're always we have new advanced electives that we introduce to keep up with the pace of where quant finance is going. We have 3 new, might be wrong. I know we definitely had 2 advanced electives this year, 2 new ones to keep abreast of what is happening in the world of quant finance. So yeah, I would definitely agree. And what I would like to ask maybe some of the other panelists is how has perhaps CQF helped you evolve in your role as a leader? Has it helped you in your leadership, to get to a leadership role, or how has it helped you?
Yeah, I can take it probably. For me, what was really the case of putting basics right in one place, like a big piece of puzzle which sticks together, and I understand where all this theory is coming from and how it can be applied for valuation models. It's the first thing. But secondly, it's probably even more importantly for me personally, it gave my internal confidence talking with senior audience, with quants within organizations about this valuation concept. So with these 2, it's like gives you internal boost, how you can operate on another level in the commercial organization. So for me, this was extremely important at that time.
Kyle, how do you feel about that? I'd like to get your insight on that, if possible, please.
Yes, and prior to doing CQF, I was working on a lot of quantitative models, but the knowledge was, I would say, in bits and parts. But after doing a CQF certification, I was thorough with the concepts, with the right from the very beginning, from the starting point, and then the certification really helped me gain that expertise in the area of derivative pricing. So definitely helped me a lot, and that actually led me to a leadership role in JP Morgan Chase, because now I had my CQF certification to back my skills. So yes, I would say it was indeed very, very helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next discussion point, I'm trying to keep abreast of the time and there's so much still material to go through, but let's move on. At a February 2024 CQF Careers Talk, 47% of respondents indicated that uncertainty about interview questions was the most challenging part of the process. And I do hear this all the time in my career clinics. I think it's just that they just don't know what to expect in a quant interview because it can be the whole range. Could you offer the audience some tips on how to effectively prepare for a quant finance interview? And I'll keep this open to all the panelists if anybody would like to take this up.
I always giving advice to be yourself. I mean, yes, you can study a little bit before the interview and just refresh your knowledge. But I believe at least what I'm looking at from the candidates, it's really to show their true themselves, how they can approach problems, what kind of solution they can offer. I'm asking about different situations, how they deal with that, in addition to my technical questions. So I think it's not so easy to like discover the person through the interview process. So just show yourself in a way how you will talk to, I don't know, parent, or you will talk to a friend. So really to demonstrate what you're able to.
Yeah, I think just to add to that point, I think most candidates who actually make through the screening process and end up in an interview, they've gone through that process where they've proven that they've got the technical knowledge and expertise to be in the interview stage. And I think at that point of time, it becomes about demonstrating with a few examples that they can, back what they've said in their CV. One example I was giving at the start of this discussion was if you're hiring someone who's going to help our portfolio optimization team, then we'll give them a specific task for that topic, and they'll be given time to explain how they would solve that problem, show through an example or work on a project. And the second thing to what Katya said, like a lot of the times it's also about behavioral questions, and I would encourage all candidates to focus on these soft skills that they can answer in the interview. A lot of the time, the interviews that quants face are around problem solving. And often we try and ask questions around problem solving outside their area of expertise. So it could be simple maths problems or simple, brain teasers or anything. Like, as long as someone's able to demonstrate a thought process besides their area of expertise, then generally they tend to be like good at solving problems in the real work environment. So, highly would recommend, preparing for different scenario-based questions and problem-solving questions in particular. And there are plenty of online resources and forums for these kind of things. So, most candidates who apply in today's day and age are aware of these. I would highly recommend that.
That's actually a good point, Mohammed. If any of the audience members want to explore the topic of quant finance interviewing in more detail, obviously we've only got a certain allocated time now. There's actually a CQF careers talk. I believe it was somewhere at the beginning of the year. One of the senior directors from Millennium took it, and she spoke for a whole hour about how to crack or how to get ahead in a quant finance interview. So there are a lot of resources. There's definitely a lot of resources on the CQF Institute website, so you can check that out as well. Become a member, join that. You have access to all the recorded videos because it is recorded at this point. Randeep, I've always heard you talk about quant finance interviews in the office. So do you have something to perhaps add to that?
To be honest, I think a lot of the points have been covered, actually. I think a lot of the points have been covered. I think, yes, you have to start with the fundamental skills, right? But I guess if you're in the interview, then, you're starting with those skills. People have looked at your qualifications and they've screened for, okay, do you have the skill set based upon your qualifications, what you've done to date, those kind of things. So a lot of that's been covered, and obviously communication, being able to solve problems, those things. The one last thing that I guess the thing I would also add to it is people interview and employ because they're trying to solve a problem. Okay. So usually a hiring manager's got a pain point, something they're trying to solve, some pain they're trying to, can resolve, if you like. So understanding actually why the organization's hiring actually will help you guide the conversation as well. Because, yes, in an interview, you want to showcase your own skills, right? That's obviously what people want to do in an interview, but that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is actually put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes and think, okay, well, they're interviewing me to solve a problem. So actually focusing on how you can help them solve their problem. And actually, I think that is something that's a general interview tip, I would say, but certainly something that, people should focus in on.
Thank you, Randeep. Let's move on to the next topic of leadership. We have touched upon some of this, and I know what Randy is going to say next about this next question, so maybe you can carry on. How do you advise leaders in the industry to upskill themselves in line with the latest technology and not fall behind the curve? I'm going to open this to all panelists, but maybe you could talk a little bit about the CQF and leadership, how that helps with leadership.
I'm not going to say very much here because I know you expect me to. I'll say just look around the panel here. Okay. I think one thing that we're very proud of on the CQF is where our alumni go in their careers. We're a part of that journey. Obviously, it's down to, individuals and what they do and what they do with their skills. But actually, probably the thing that we are proud of, and when I talk to Paul Wilmot, who's still very involved in the CQF, the thing we often talk about is, alumni and what they go on to do and how they go and do great things. And I think just looking around the screen here, you can see people going on and, going into leadership roles. So I think actually the rest of the panel are best placed to talk about their journeys, maybe.
Sure. Mohammed, would you like to start the conversation about how leadership?
Yeah, so your original question was around how leadership can stay up to speed with.
Yes.
Look, for sure, we highly recommend CQF to everyone. I think, it's a very good qualification for sure. I think as someone like me who'd been in the organization for like 16 years, and maybe I can talk about my journey a bit. I had to transition into a quant finance role, and for me it was super important that I was talking the language with our customers and understanding what they were talking about when we were trying to solve their problems. And so upskilling with the CQF definitely helped and highly recommended. But some of the other things you could do as leaders to stay up to speed is you can be part of different thought leadership groups, attend relevant conferences and events in which different ideas are shared. I think that often tends to be an eye-opener for new trends that you might be missing out within your own organization. So I find a lot of value when I'm part of some kind of a roundtable discussion or attending a relevant event. The other thing I would recommend to leaders is finding some kind of mentorship in someone who they aspire to be, or someone they think are an expert in their field. So for instance, for myself, an area of development for me is news and textual analytics and NLP models, for instance. And that's something I study in the CQF, but then I have some subject matter experts at Bloomberg who I use as mentors to learn about this topic. And if you have a group of people who are experts or subject matter experts in your own organization or in the industry, even as leaders, you can learn a lot from these different group of people. So definitely have a few mentors within the industry or the organization to continue learning. And then I guess as leaders, just have like a growth mindset. You also have to sometimes just go back, do the basics, start working on some problems and, get your hands dirty with some of the projects that your teams are working on. And that way you are, in line with the expectations and continuously learning.
Thank you, Mohammed. I actually have a related question. This ties in a little bit from the last question, and maybe Payal, you could help answer the next question. To ensure a steady flow of quant talent, what proactive measures, programs, or policies does your organization, and what have they implemented to help employees stay current with essential skills required now or say in the future?
Yes, a lot is happening across organizations, not just in my organizations, where trainings are being organized, given that, organizations have realized that AI ML is going to be the future, and it is something that everyone has to use in some form or shape. Then training on that in these areas is is very much required. So as an organization, people are now organizing these courses internally so that people are up to date with these skills, and especially for leaders, the prior discussion that we were having, the focus is also on the leaders to upskill themselves, and not just for the junior team members to know these areas, because unless the leaders, because the vision and the vision has to come from the leaders, right? And how to use them. Probably the execution bit will be done by the juniors, but the leaders are going to build the vision around it, right? So then the focus is also on them to be able to see how these AI/ML techniques can be used in their respective fields. So yes, a lot is being done across teams. Please I've talked to several banks in India as to how people are updating themselves, and if the organizations are doing anything around that. And yes, everyone is like, every organization here is doing some sort of trainings to upskill their workforce.
So Payal, what qualities do you prioritize in your quant recruitment?
In terms of qualities, well, as we discussed earlier, the basics are definitely there, but then what we would be looking at is ability to innovate, ability to create certain things, because that's what at this stage, people are, at least in the quant finance field, it's more of an exploratory stage when it comes to AI/ML. So all we are looking for is people be able to innovate certain things, if not build exotic models, but then they have an idea in terms of innovation, right? So that's one of the qualities that we look for when we are hiring. And even in the leader side, one thing that we focus is to try to, where leaders are able to pivot themselves, not thinking about the classical ways to do things, but are able to pivot themselves to adapt to new technologies. So that's another quality that we look when you're hiring for leaderships. So leadership roles. So those sort of qualities is what we look for when we try to hire people across experience. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Katya, just a quick question leading on from the question I asked Payal. How do you position your firm then to be an attractive destination for top talent?
It's probably very easy to reply from Morgan Stanley perspective. It's as a global investment bank, which is like one of the top banks. So of course, we are very keen to have exceptional talents in our workforce. But I think what we are also trying to differentiate ourselves is really our unique internal culture, which is very supportive, very diverse, and which really aims to flourish the strong growth, professional growth in every single individual who is working in the organization. So in a sense, we are genuinely, and I'm very confident to talk about the whole bank, we are genuinely putting as our core values serving the client and really commit to the diversity, to the strong internal culture. I think this is important for every organization to offer not only professional knowledge and expertise and career path, but also the upskill of the soft skills and commitment to support each other.
Thank you, Katya. I actually have so many more questions. So I'm trying to see which questions we can ask in the next minute or so before I hand over, and then I have to go to the Q&A. How about this question, as it will have to be the question. Although Western Europe, and this is actually covers regional trends in hiring, and Mohammed, you and I have had a conversation about this. It's a question I find very interesting to see if things have changed globally. Although Western Europe and areas of North America continue to be hubs of quant finance roles, there's definitely been a growing trend towards opportunities in APAC and the Middle East, would you say? So would you agree with that statement, Mohammed? And we've only touched upon this, but I thought this would be a great question for you to expand on and perhaps other members of the panel.
Yeah, this is a great question and something that's very close to me as well in my current job. Obviously, a big part of my job is to go around the world and see customers and ask questions around their problems, and then we have a team of quant researchers who co-work with our customers to write algorithms, right? Essentially helping them with their research and creating ideas. So having covered both Europe so I cover Europe and the Middle East in my current role, and the trend definitely is there's a lot of movement. And I will speak about APAC in a second, but let me talk about Middle East for a moment, and it kind of also includes India in that. There's a lot of flow of top talent to the Middle East. Just to put things into perspective, Abu Dhabi has a hedge fund island, right? And people who've been to Abu Dhabi would know what I'm talking about. And the island is full in terms of office space. They have to build a new island to accommodate more people so that more hedge funds can open shop. Last week we had an event in Dubai, speaking to DIFC, and they were saying they're another 45 hedge funds waiting for regulatory approval to open shop over there. Another key insight I can share is that, in terms of traded volume for commodities, the Middle East, or UAE in particular, is now at the same level as Switzerland. And that includes a lot of commodity traders. And, the list kind of goes on. You're looking at hedge funds and the growth in AUM for sovereign wealth funds, and some of the top sovereign wealth funds establishing quant finance teams just to manage money, right? So all of that means a lot of talent has moved into the region, and it's also inspiring a lot of existing people to kind of upskill and compete with this talent. So in my job, this is a clear trend, right? So we have a lot of meetings and projects going on in the region just because of this. And that should also mean there's a lot of demand for courses like the CQF in this region, right? So a lot of people will want to upskill. And then same for APAC. Without giving any confidential information, I can also say with confidence that in our line of business, a lot of our business came from APAC for quant finance, because there's a lot of people working in this industry who are experts and they're trying to be very, very competitive and always trying to use the latest technologies. And so there's definitely a very strong trend, both in terms of movement and in terms of the players, both in APAC and the Middle East. And I think it will just continue as both the regions continue to grow. And my colleagues who cover India say the same. There's a lot of talent and a lot of appetite to kind of be experts and be a regional player for quant finance. So hopefully that gives some flavor of the question you asked around regional trends.
I think definitely quant finance, the demand for quant finance, and what we're seeing on the CQF, people taking up the qualification, is becoming more global. And we're always going to have a strong enrollment following in London, New York, in parts of Europe, in Asia Pacific, in areas like Singapore, Hong Kong, we get that. But certainly over the last few years, the growth in India, for example, is been significant. China, very, very strong growth. In other countries in Asia Pacific, like Thailand, the Capital Markets Development Fund in Thailand fund a lot of people to come onto the CQF because they really want to upskill their local population. And more recently, I can say I totally agree with Mohammed. I think I should, if I put my travel schedule out there, you'd actually see, because I end up going to these places. So this year alone, I've been in the UAE 3 times. I've been in Riyadh twice, and really that's because of clients. It really is very simply because the demand there for quant skills, and organizations wanting to send people onto CQF is just grown exponentially in the region. So definitely, we are. That global demand is expanding. I think it's great to see. It's great to see that.
And if I may just add in specifically for India, so earlier the trend used to be like, India was treated as an offshore location, but recently because of these demand for quant finance and people, banks, and not just banks, actually, we've seen a lot of hedge funds opening up shops in India, particularly in Mumbai and Bangalore. India is no longer treated as an offshore location, and I must say people contribute equally to the business as folks in London or New York would be doing. So definitely the demand for quant finance in terms of role has also seen a drastic change. And definitely certifications like CQF is helping people build that skill set and to enter into these kind of roles.
I would actually second that, Pyle. I mean, I work on the recruitment email at the Institute, and the 3 years I've been working at Fitch Learning, I've seen the number of roles in the India region truly grow, and it's yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. In the interest of time, and we have slightly gone over, I am going to try and fit a few questions in. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. There's a question here from Marcus. Do you think that a model similar to what exists in Silicon Valley, where venture capital fosters startups, could be a path for developing innovative ML and AI solutions for finance? Investment banks and hedge funds would act as venture capitalists, funding entrepreneurs instead of recruiting employees. And how do you feel CQF could bridge that gap? I'll leave that to all the panelists here. Whoever would like to take that one.
I think if we talk, I will just say, if we talk about investment banks, we need to think of it as a very regulated environment, very regulated industry. So good or bad, majority of regulators in different jurisdictions and countries do require have people on the side in the bank responsible on specific things. So as an idea, it's a brilliant idea, I would say, but as a practicality, it would require specific steps, not only from the banks themselves, but mostly from regulators.
Thank you, Katya. Any other insights on that question, or I can move to the next question?
Some of this may be already not in the same way as Silicon Valley, but some of this already exists. Some people who might be familiar with World Quant Brain might be aware that they foster this kind of an environment where they can almost kind of hire freelancer quants to work on different strategies and be compensated out of it. So I would highly recommend to look at something like that. It's not a widespread ecosystem like the Silicon Valley, but it's a starting point. So do Google that and see if you can get some relevant information from there.
Maybe I'll add, because part of the question was how could the CQF help bridge that gap? There are, because I agree with Katya. I think investment banks doing that is going to be a far stretch. They're just too regulated, and it's not probably a hedge fund. That kind of environment is probably more appropriate for this kind of activity. So there are competitions, trading competitions, these kind of things that go on. We at the CQF try and partner with them. We are hopefully going to be running a partnered event next year, kind of a quantathon. I won't say any more than that at the moment, so keep an eye out for that. These kind of activities, these kind of events will help kind of bridge that gap, but probably not with investment banks. When we talk to investment banks, they tend to have a very different approach, because they're regulated, not because the people there, it's just restrictions there. It's a very different environment.
Thank you, Randy. A question from Nadetto. Alternative data sources have become an essential asset in quantitative finance, offering unique insights that traditional financial data may not provide. What role will alternative data sources such as satellite imagery, social media sentiment, and geolocation data play in shaping the future of quantitative finance? And again, I'll open that to all panelists. I don't think that was directed at anyone.
And maybe I can just chime in on that one. It's a great question. This is very topical, especially when it comes to hedge funds. I think margins are shrinking, signal generation is hard, and people are always looking for new data sets to generate signals from. A lot of the conversations, especially I have, do center around alternative data sets. So some of the stuff that is mentioned in there, so like supply chain data, credit card transactions, geospatial data. I think unstructured data is becoming super important in general. Anyone who's looking to basically demonstrate skills that might be unique would want to work on some of these problems. Yeah, I would say a highly relevant topic. Comes up in a lot of conversations, especially with hedge funds, and something to keep an eye on. Great question.
Thank you, Mohammed. Well, I think we probably will only have time, but I'm going to just check with my team if we can take any more questions because we have run over in terms of timing. I've got one question I know we can take, which is from Tiago. Big thank you to the panel on the very interesting discussion. There were a lot of discussion on what might be needed for quants in the near future, for example, machine learning and AI. But could the panel give their impressions on the where? I mean, what's the appetite for new quants in, say, derivatives pricing or energy futures? If you could advise a new quant to read on a given part of the industry, where would it be for the market you to work on?
I do believe that, it's really my personal opinion. I think in the area of commodities, it's really definitely the area that I believe will have lots of potential for to develop any new things. I would say in comparison to the other asset classes, rates probably has the most developed area already. So something which is around commodities or even portfolio type of management, portfolio type of strategies or portfolio type of risks, I think still have lots of potential to go and explore.
I think one way to see AI and ML is kind of like a new toolbox, So quants were, historically using a traditional, what we call traditional toolbox, and it's still widely used and very important. But the nature of the people who come into quant finance is they love to learn new things. They love new tools. They love to explore. They love to play, right? And so this is a new tools box. So actually one of the things I see is, and one of the things that we see certainly on the CQF when we're teaching these new tools is also how to apply them to old problems, the same problems, and just apply a new technique and see if it's better. Is it better? Does it work better? Is it quicker? Does it produce more accurate results? Is it, is there an advantage? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And when it comes to parts of the industry, they move at different speeds. They move at different speeds, right? Some will move quick. We've mentioned them, hedge funds, maybe, sovereign wealth funds. Some of them will move much quicker. Banks maybe a bit slower. Asset managers maybe in between. So I think it's an evolving space. It's a new toolbox. It will be applied to old problems and new. And as I say, as we go forward, we'll definitely, I think, I'm very positive that this new toolbox will be adopted more and more to solve problems in a different way,
Thank you, Mandeep. We have another question. How do you think quant trading can help retail traders?
It's probably similar to what Mandeep just said. When when you have a tool, and particularly when we're talking about artificial intelligence, and you know how you teach this tool, what kind of samples you are giving, what kind of outcome you're expecting, when you understand the internal dependencies that this black box has, then this understanding you can apply anywhere else. I mean, it's more, you're constructing the logical picture for yourself, how you tackle the problem using the tool, and we use it elsewhere. So in the sense, whatever you calibrated so far, and we know artificial intelligence is widely used in the retail right now, if you understand how it works, what training sample is given, not given, how it evolves the outcome, then you can use it in other applications. But you need to go through that journey in a sense.
Thank you so much, Katya. I think we have to wrap up here in the interest of time. I know there's more questions in the chat, and a lot of these questions are rather personal questions about careers. So what I would say and highly recommend is if you have questions on the CQF, please do attend the CQF info session. And I did mention that the next one is in January. Randeep will be taking that, and he will be able to answer a lot of these questions about the CQF. In the interest of time, we just would not be able to get through all of them today. So I apologize for that. But those questions, if you please can attend that info session, he will be best able to answer those questions relating to your career and CQF, etc. So we've come to the close of the careers panel, and I'd like to take a moment to thank all of the panelists for taking the time to join us today and sharing their invaluable insights, experiences, and advice. So I took some takeaways today, some re-emerging themes that we were talking about within this hour, and it was a couple of things actually. Get your basics, get your foundation, get your fundamentals, get all of that correct, and you'll be in good standing. I loved what Katya said, was to be curious and passionate. I think that was a wonderful insight. Be agile and have the ability to create, think out of the box, and finally upskill to get that confidence. As those are some of the things that I managed to write and take away from today's session. I've learned so much more, and I know the audience has too. So the CQF program does start in January, and you can learn a bit more about it on the website, which is cqf.com. But please do also keep an eye out on the CQF Institute website, which is institute.org, for all the events that are coming in 2025. We are currently planning those. We're excited about what we're bringing next year to our audience. And I'm going to leave it there. And thank you so much for the audience too, for taking time out of your day to join in various parts of the world. And as a CQF Institute member and all of my colleagues here, we will see you in the next new year. Thank you so much for your time today.